Hey guys, Budcat7 here. Okay, it is Thursday, January 6th, 2022, and I want to thank you for visiting the Stonewall Research channel here on YouTube. I really do appreciate it. Well, Happy New Year, everybody. I hope everybody had a happy and healthy New Year and made it through in one piece, and here we are in 2022, and hopefully it'll be better than next year, but I have no faith in the system, so it doesn't matter anyway. But not to be too much of a downer, let's talk about today's video. And in this video, I want to show more of the satellite imagery courtesy of Atlantis, Bolivia, in the Bolivian Altiplano. And you have to excuse me for if I sound nasal. I still have this damn C thing, and I don't know what variant I have or whatever it is, but it's long lasting, and all the people I know who have had it or whatever, it just seems to be like a cold that goes on forever. And I guess that's because it's weaponized, and whoever did it. But in any case, let's look at some of the satellite imagery from the Altiplano in Bolivia, and it's just so very interesting. And this comes from Atlantis, Bolivia, which is Jim Allen's website here. Jim Allen is this researcher who, claims that Bolivia here is somehow Atlantis because of various things he talks about, including like this circular city here shown in this, artist rendering of it. But when you think about it, this is how Mexico City was built as well. Maybe all the cities of quote unquote Atlantis, which he gives a lot of evidence for it, and what he thinks and everything. And I think it's all very good stuff. But what really was Atlantis? They may have called themselves something like that, or hence all the names. But it seems like many of these cities were circular like this, and you have these evidence of artificial circular harbors in the Louisiana deltas there and whatnot. So it seems like maybe this was the model for all Atlantean cities described in this way, with these canals and ring canals and ring cities and all this kind of stuff, which certainly makes some sense here, since these people were so heavily focused on, seems to be, an aquatic environment, no matter where they were located. In the Altiplano in Bolivia is located quite a bit inland. This area is Pupo Lake there, and this is where it is in Bolivia, the mountainous region here. There's mountains all around this area here. And so it's, pretty rough terrain, but there are, some of this flat area in here, well inland, and this is what we're going to be taking a look at today. And what Jim Allen contends here is very interesting. You should take a look at what he has to say and his website here, that we're looking at all these satellite views courtesy of Jim Allen here and his research. And there's one particular satellite view in here which is of particular interest to me, and we'll talk about it a little bit. But let's take a look at this, because again, the level of activity that's going on here certainly suggests, a sort of production on a sort of industrial scale. So you have to think about it. When you have this sort of production going on an industrial scale, there's always going to be overproduction going on. So the problem is with these sort of, goods that, are, fresh vegetables and fish, let's say, or whatever, fresh produce of whatever variety it is, it's going to spoil in a short period of time unless it's processed in a certain way. And, what can you do with it? But of course, you're going to want somebody to take it, and, if everybody has an ample amount in your society, there's going to be this overproduction going on. So let's say, the world was a lot smaller back when, and people knew of each other in far off, distant places, and these people sent agents out. When at the very least, certainly there were, transatlantic trips over to the Americas. Many researchers believe, hence all these sort of, you know, um, things that point to different civilizations visiting the Americas, right? So if the place was well populated and with millions of people, you're not colonizing this place without warfare going on, but you're going to set up trading posts, outposts, because trade has to be secured. I mean, this is why, a lot of times when people make first contact, they leave somebody behind. It's a popular theme and you see in like Star Trek or whatever, somebody goes off with the alien race that nobody knew anything about to be a, a friendly representative and sort of guarantee, um, good faith, show good faith to whoever it is. And this is a common theme, but when you have established trade with somewhere, obviously you have to make sure the trade is secure. Once your civilization is sort of dependent upon it, the everyday function of your society is dependent on the sort of influx of, resource, whatever resources it is that you need to acquire. Once that's established and steady, okay, now your civilization is dependent upon that. So securing it is of the utmost importance. There's always this gradual progression where, like the Romans, for instance, would do these sorts of things, establish trade, etc. But once their civilization was dependent on the resource, whatever they were extracting from these places, then it became critical. So it couldn't be like, first you're providing security for them. At some point, you're taking them over because you can't have it any other way. You must secure this, trade or supply of resources, whatever, it's always going to turn into that because of how dependent you become on the resource. So, this is why these all evidences of civilizations, and obviously, there's going to be intermixing of peoples, et cetera, et cetera. This is where I find DNA in the populations of the Americans with like, 500 different types of DNAs in them and, whatnot. It's like near impossible to figure out what is the original DNA of these people. So it's very interesting. And, once you are doing this on sort of agriculture, whatever seems to be mostly fish farming, okay, again, with the types of things we talk about, what the people's diets were back in the Stone Age when supposedly this occurred. Um, what were their diets like? And it seems to be heavily focused on fish farming, as well as, crop farming as well. But a lot of it has to do with fish farming. So, because again, if you have millions of people living in these places, again, if the land animals provide any sort of resource for you, they're going to have to be managed. Okay, otherwise, you cannot. There have to be limits on the amount taken, where their habitats are, etc. Managing them by killing off so much of the herd so they survive, lean times, whatever it might be. These are the kind of things that have to be done. So, I mean, it seems to be that, the main focus of their efforts was in fish farming, and these things just go to prove it. These satellite images, research done by Jim Allen here, and also the research done by Charles C. Mann in his books. Okay? These people are experts at this, and it seems to be because of the artificial harbors on the coastal areas that are involved nearby these things suggest that these things were being exported somewhere else. So you can almost bet that the whole Christopher Columbus story was a cover-up story. They were the conquistadors going into Central America to take it over, and the Americas to take it over, was a result of a trade relationship that had been ongoing probably for centuries. Okay. When the Spanish finally got tired of dealing with whoever it was here in the Americas, they decided that they were going to take over instead of, dealing with their trade partners anymore. It's going to be a hostile takeover. Okay. This is the real story. Okay. Budcat 7 says, okay. This is my hypothesis about the version of history that we're not hearing about. Okay, the whole Christopher Columbus thing was a whole cover-up story for a hostile takeover of the Americas and the resources here, not only for the gold and everything, it was everything else. Okay, so let's take a look at these satellite images in the Altiplano here. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. It has to do with Long Island and also the stone walls. Okay, very interesting to me anyway, what's shown here. Okay, so a selection of satellite images, some of them of almost art-like quality, would show the extent of canalization and abandoned cultivations on the Bolivian Altiplano around Oruro. Cultivations have recently started in the area again, with quinoa being a popular crop. Small areas of Nuga, which, could be another one of these genetically engineered plant species. Seems that a lot of them came from the Americas. Certainly corn, without a doubt. Small areas of new canals can be clearly seen, usually in irregular patches, while other more ancient canals are sometimes reused and maintained. However, an enormous number of old canals appear to have been abandoned and disused for a considerable time, probably since the time of the conquest, when agriculture was abandoned and the people set to work in the mines. One of the key factors of Atlantis, if that's really what the story, I don't think it is, it's just hostile takeover. I'm sure they made people work in mines and all kind of stuff, but I think where the gold came from was what these people wanted in trade for their agriculture and whatever it is that they dealt with the people outside of the Americas. That's where all the gold came from. It came from outside, didn't come from the Americas. Obviously, that's what they wanted. One of the key factors of Atlantis, as described by Plato, was a level plain which was crisscrossed by a system of irrigation and drainage canals, which could be any of these places, including Mexico City. These satellite images show that alternate flooding and drought, along with irrigation for cultivation, has always been a key feature of the Altiplano near Oruro. So it's Lago Uru, Pupo Lake there in the Altiplano. And all these areas around the lake are covered with all these fantastic canal works everywhere. The region between Oruro and the northern edge of Lake Pubo, known as El Toro, shows an enormous concentration of parallel straight canals. It's just, when you see it, it's just incredible. And the scale of these things is amazing as well. And here's some of these grid patterns with these canals and parallel canals. You can see in here, they're very fine in here at this level in the satellite image, but they're huge down there on the ground. And this is in the middle of nowhere here. There's nobody living out there or anything. And all these specialized things that are going on as well. There's all these grid patterns here everywhere, and more finer parallel lines, when you go closer in. You're going to show close-ups of that, don't worry. More sort of grid lines of these evidence of these canals. Above, old canals disappearing beneath the sand. So apparently sand's building up there, and canals are disappearing beneath the sands. The canals show up better in the wet season. So some of them fill up, I'm sure. You can see more of these parallel lines just all over the place. Some of them being so regular. And again, how you come up with these ultra straight lines. It's one thing when you do it and it's like 25 feet wide, but these are hundreds of feet wide. Even you can do it with, rope or string or whatever it is. I mean, how are you going to do it so perfectly straight, with a 300-foot rope across from one side to the other to measure it perfectly parallel there? I mean, how is this accomplished without transits and measuring devices, etc.? Things are like amazing, incredible. Canals show up better in wet season east of Belen, El Toro region in this Altiplano flat area. And how better to move a great deal of material and stuff than by boat and easy on the water, just float it to wherever it's got to go by barge. These look like salt trails indicating remains of parallel canals in the desert Altiplano northeast of Volcan Camado on a level rectangular plain. Note the orientation is the same as the canals in the El Toro region just south of Oruro. So, we're talking about salt water up in the middle of Bolivia there. Well, it's a number of lakes in South America there are salt water lakes. Well, how'd that happen? Unless the ocean washed up over the landmass that high. These are where these great salt lakes are coming from, some giant catastrophe that happened some way back in time. And it's interesting that, the very oldest maps show South America as an island with North America not showing up there at all. But I think they already knew at that point that that place was taboo because of all the cataclysms and catastrophes that happened there. This is where, the planet took a lot of hits from interplanetary electrical discharge, probably with Mars, blasted the American Southwest and, of course, all of North America here, and then blasted out in the Eye of Sahara and cut the whole trench there in Mars. Came right out of the Earth by the Eye of Sahara and blasted a line in Mars there. It didn't, because it's giant Lichtenberg figure. That doesn't happen by accident. That only happens with an electrical discharge. And they say the eye of Sahara is also Atlantis because of the concentric rings, but it's clear to me it looks like it's where a discharge came right in America here and blasted everything that was up here to pieces. Everybody said stay away from here. So many cataclysms going up on the North America, and they concentrated on South America, which seemed to be still operating, even though they underwent some sort of cataclysm in the past too, judging by all the um, megalithic damage there down in Peru. Yeah, how'd salt water get all the way up there? It would be fresh water, wouldn't it? How'd that happen? The canals show up better in the wet season, showing more of these parallel canals. And, when you see the scale of these things, what were they producing? I mean, for who? John Jensen is going to take a look at his work in a little bit, too. But he's saying it's, judging by the scale, being an engineer and estimating, what do you need these giant harbors for and canal systems, etc. He's estimating the number of people that it was, handling what this was figured to be would be somewhere between 200 and 500 million people. So let's say that 200 million people were in the Americas, but what about 300 other million people? Well, that's where all the exporting was going on. And we know they were exporting. We know they had transatlantic journeys going on in the ancient past, because the Alexandria, the Syracusia, is one of the most popular videos on my channel, because there's a decommissioned ship renamed the Alexandria, and it was burnt down in the harbor there along with all the rest of the ships. It had a giant library on there, but it also had corn on board in the original cargo manifest. How'd that happen? Like 1,000 years before Christopher Columbus discovered the Americas, supposedly. So, it's all bullshit stories. No such thing happened. The Spanish decided to, take over their trading partner. They were done with friendly trading after, hundreds and hundreds of years or thousands of years. They were done with that. It was a hostile takeover. Some of the canals are more modern, such as the one crossing diagonally from the left, cut for relief drainage purposes. It's this one over here that, cuts, bisects them here. This modern one here over these old ones, these ancient ones. Here it is over here, going down, new one. This river flowing through, and it seems like these canals ran through this, so this is newer than these canal lines, right? And here, this is underwater here, above wells and canals beneath Lago Oruro, Lake Pupo. This is beneath the lake, so the lake wasn't always there, apparently, or a much smaller lake that existed between Oruro and Lago Pupo. So there's all these underwater earthworks going on and canals underwater. Canals are redug over more ancient canals. Note the well on the right supplying water from an underground water table. Okay, with stones around it in a circle. And this grid pattern here. Saying the same thing here with this well here, and look at all this grid patterns here with everything in between. God only knows what was going on. What are they doing there? Parallel canals disappearing beneath the sands of the desert. So all these parallel canals in these huge areas, there's hundreds of feet in between these lines. Just what was going on there? I look at the scale. Who are you feeding? You're feeding like the whole world. Okay, so here's what's of particular interest to me. This image right here. And in this region, there is also an immense number of ancient walled plots, particularly to the northwest of Lake Pupo. Okay, so here's all these walled plots. A lot of them seem to be, in some sort of relatively standard size, but if you look closer, there's smaller ones. But what's going on here? What's all this for? Okay, if these are all walled plots, what are all these walled plots for here? Is it the living areas, or it doesn't seem to be. It's like a giant warehouse, you know, with keeping all different things in different places, but maybe a combination of both. You got some canals going through there, I guess, unless these are streets. But it just made me think of the stone walls. And, here's the granite stone wall mapper in New Hampshire. And it just makes me think of these things here because what's going on with these stone walls? Because look at this. I mean, they're just everywhere here. And it's just amazing. The whole entire area is filled with these stone walls. And what's it all about? It's just incredible amount of stone wall. Just out of control. What's going on here in the northeastern part of North America? Is there a lot of canals and artificial harbors? Well, there sure is. Because right down here on Long Island, by East Cedar Beach, right near me here on Long Island, is a 3,800-foot artificial harbor. Traces of a very old and degraded canal that crossed Cedar Island is clearly evident in the photo below. It goes out across the sand spit to open water, i.e. the Long Island Sound. That's this canal that runs underwater here. You see some traces of the earthworks below here, and here's the artificial harbor that's 3,800 feet long. What are the Native Americans in their canoes doing with a 3,800-foot artificial harbor? And it just happens to be right directly south because the stone walls go way down through, not only through New Hampshire and Vermont here in Maine and New York, of the northern part of New York, and all throughout New York and the mountainous regions, but all the way down through Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island. And Long Island doesn't have any stone walls, but it's got these artificial harbors. And more than one, because this is Cedar Beach. Here's Point of Woods. Okay, this is this harbor is 1,125 feet, 1,125 feet in length, and about 270 feet in width. Okay. The small harbor to the right is about 335 foot in length and about 160 foot in width. Its egress canal is wider at about 60 feet wide. This harbor is too small to handle any small or medium under 100-foot commercial or industrial shipping. It is more likely both of these harbors had some kind of commercial connection at the time of their construction, so smaller commercial harbors for local fishermen, etc. Both are built on a secondary tidal plane up against the secondary tidal shoulder. The shoulder's sunken land edge is estimated to be about 6 foot deep. It is obvious these harbors have absolutely no connection to any current shoreside use, and it is also obvious these harbors were constructed at substantial cost and must have had a reasonable cost value for the expenditures. In general, Corps of Engineering bid for just a larger harbor, if it were 20 feet deep, would mean an excavation of about 675,000 cubic yards. In today's bid, dollars of about $8 to $12 per cubic yard means the project has a value of about $6.7 million. That is way too much money to spend without purpose or reason. In any age, here's East Marshes, Long Island. This is an absolutely stunning piece of evidence. This is part of the Mauritius Channel near the eastern end of Long Island. And this is John Jensen's work right here, if I didn't mention it. This unnamed lower center island has degraded, with aged sand spill covering over the deeper Mauritius Channel. Just to the right, tidal flow and sand spill has completely degraded the channel. Sand spill from the small island to the right has overfilled the degraded channel. The depth here is very interesting, as it appears to be different and deeper than the secondary tidal shoulder, or at least the tertiary tidal shoulder, and may be deeper. The long channel just above the lower island has been filled in by erosion. The channel originally continued east, where a secondary tidal shoulder is evidenced above the lower island. A further channel at a 90-degree angle runs north in an unused harbor. The most significant feature of this complex is the tidal wash to the right or east of the center island. This tide wash has silted in and covered over the underlying channel to a degree of nearly obliterating the channel. The suggestion of a tidal wash is that the lower opening to the ocean is more recent than the long, large east-west channel, and that opening or breach caused the tidal wash action to eventually cover over or silt in the long channel. In my opinion, the erosion and tidal wash at this location is proof positive the system was built long before our current use of this area. In addition, the lack of any dock or shoreside use for such a large complex system is mute testimony to its ancient use and function. This is irrefutable evidence of the age of ancient canals, channels, and harbors on Long Island Sound. So that's what's going on near me here, up on Long Island here, and here's what's going on just north of that. All right. Everywhere. You got this. And it is amazing. This complex right here is just off the hook of ancient man-made stone constructions. And that's what all those little pink things there represent. And that's the ones that are just have been verified on one level. There's more, plenty more. And here's Lake Winnipesaukee, about the out of place artifact there. Is one of my most popular videos on my channel. So here's what's going on over here, just north of Lake Pupo here, with a number of ancient walled plots. Well, you're talking about production of fish farming and agricultural production on an industrial scale. And in these huge areas, immense number of ancient walled plots. Well, what were they for? What was going on? I don't know if that's the question I ask about the stone walls when I have, huge artificial harbors is so close in relation to where these stone walls are. Above a system of parallel canals extending beneath what is now the edge of the Rio Desaguadero. Above, beneath the diagonal canal, there is even older system of parallel canals. Parallel canals. So when you think about parallel canals, what this suggests is that there's so much traffic on these things that it requires that there be two-way traffic going on. Okay, people going to and people coming from, going to wherever they're going. Okay, so much traffic that you need to make parallel canals, which is be found just about everywhere, including Louisiana and all these places, but they're like pinned straight. How'd that happen? They're hundreds and hundreds of feet wide. Okay, you know, think of the scale of the work involved and what would have to go on today, what equipment would need to be used, and these people are doing it with their privates flapping around underneath their deerskin tunics or whatever it is. I don't know, but how old are these things really? And then, even Jim Allen has seen some research where they're saying that some of these canal systems are 9 and 10,000 years old. Okay, so real cavemen, Oog and Og were cutting these pin straight canals, right? And investing in these huge projects, farming projects, agricultural projects, fish farming, crop farming, etc. Right? With, huge animals running around eating them everywhere, I guess. Unless they were of a certain size, then, all these big animals wouldn't seem so big, I guess, maybe. Because I know who was doing earthworks in North America for sure. Big, big people. Above, the close-up shows more clearly an older system of parallel canals beneath the diagonal canal. So these parallel canals everywhere, going to and coming from. And these canals cutting these grades just like everywhere. The parallel canals passing through the edge of the Rio Desaguadero show this part has sunk and the river expanded since the canals were first made. Above, this canal runs beneath the edge of the Rio Desaguadero to the old course of the river. Above, this canal reaches to what would have been the original course of the Rio Desaguadero on the right-hand side of the frame. Looks pretty straight to me. How'd they do that? These cavemen with rope and line, and you're trying to handle a 300-foot rope, and what doesn't sag in the middle there, and you get uneven measurements everywhere and whatnot. I don't know. How'd they do that? Above, ancient canals running through the Rio Desaguadero near Lake Pupo. So you can see these lines here. It goes right through the river, just completely on the same vector, right through it. Okay, what was there first? Again, the waterways were managed in a way in the past that, just sort of being understood now. Above, ancient canals on the northern shore of Lake Pupal. So all these lines and crisscrosses and everything. What were they doing on that scale? These areas are huge. Above, ancient canals bordering the Rio Descadero near Lake Pupal. More complexes, more thinner parallels. This is in the middle of nowhere. Nobody's there now. And this thing right here is amazing. Above, remains of a section of canal 200 feet wide, 60 meters wide, draining into Lago Oruro, part of Lake Pupo, south of Oruro. The canal shows up particularly well in the wet season when the surrounding fields have become flooded. Oblique view. Remains of a section of canal 200 feet, 60 meters wide, draining into Lago Oruro, part of Lake Pupo, south of Oruro. Okay, so the cavemen are building these things, right? We got to get, all the backhoes out and all the big trucks and earth movers and everything else, and get all those guys out with their transits and measuring sticks to, get the, topography right and level everything out and whatnot and all that kind of stuff, right? And running around, barely could speak and, all hairy and everything and smelly, right? Sure. Uh-huh. His 200-foot wide canal, you know, looks like pretty damn straight lines. How'd that happen? Remains of the section of canal. You can see things crisscrossing through it or whatever at some later date. And look at what's going on here. Oh my goodness. What are they doing over here, man? Like super major production going on. Like God knows how many people you need to take care of this thing and whatnot. God. And who's it going all to? Looks like some kind of structure or house or something over here. What's all that about? It's like tons of parallel. And many of these look very, very evenly spaced. Perfectly done, perfectly straight. Going back to what time? Old abandoned canals just north of La Jolla. Old abandoned canals northwest of Oruro. Lots of them. Huge areas. Close up of the old abandoned canals. What were these people doing? These are divided into smaller strips. Wider ones, smaller ones. Major, major reduction. Major scale. It's a much closer up. Old abandoned irrigation canals and plots just north of La Jolla Canals and irrigation are a feature of the area. Many appear to be very ancient, whilst others appear more recent. But what is astonishing is the amount of former agriculture and irrigation in what today appears to be largely salt desert. These appear to be more recent and current irrigation channels. Cultivation of quinoa has been reintroduced in the area. Southwest. I mean, God, what, this is huge, man. What, how many people you need to take care of all this stuff? Like immense amounts of people. Looks like a well there in the middle of nowhere. More parallel channels. More canals getting covered by sand, by the desert. It's like a super complex thing going on here. Like, what is going on here? This is 200 feet, 50 meters right here. Look at all the stuff in here. You can barely see it, but my God, like gridded out like crazy. More parallel canals. Just incredible amount of stuff going on here with the work that was involved. I mean, you're doing this work. Who's doing all the farming and all that kind of stuff? You better have a lot of people, I guess, to do all this stuff. Naming all these areas, Camarca North. More grids and, in the middle of nowhere. Nobody's there now. Like major productions going on here, and the wells in each part of it, dug into each, how far back in time are we talking about? Ponds northwest of Pampa Olagas, and these are very interesting because the ponds are all done in rows. At one time you're going to think that these things are, naturally occurring, but you know, these appear to be small artificial ponds dug in rows. And here's how it is, because they have these channels linking them, and long since abandoned and no ponds there now, but evidence of it. That's what all these things are doing. Similar artificial ponds also exist southwest of Pampa Alagas. Cultivation fields around the borders of Salar de Uyuni, southwest of Volcan Tanupa. So more grid lines, like crazy grid lines and all this stuff. Ancient, going back to the ancient past. What were they doing here? It's just huge areas of commercial farming going on somewhere in a way distant past. And overproduction is going to lead to export. You're going to be looking for a buyer. Or at least somebody's going to come to you and say, hey, we need to. And, this was probably at one time the breadbasket of the world of some previously existing civilization. What we call Atlantis and everything else was just the Americas here. And they're saying it's South America because South America was what survived. Whatever was going on in North America didn't survive. Like Jimmy and I think it's a lot older. What was going on, the Stonewall system and everything that was going on was a lot older. And whatever was going on in North America came to some sort of abrupt end. And because of the map and only showing South America as some sort of island over there is because nobody wanted to go to North America. It was totally destroyed. Just everywhere. These grids and lines and what's going on here. In the middle of nowhere, all of these earthworks and huge, major. Think of the work that it took to do all this stuff without machinery, supposedly. And how far back in time are we really talking? They have their dates right? I doubt it. They all have New World bias. It's not the New World, it's the old world. So more of these huge areas with parallel lines. So it says here about the age of the canals, the possible age of the canals. See also dating of canals in northern Peru, 4,684 BC. Dating and location of canals in northern Peru, Wikipedia. The new finds suggest that agricultural settlements may have appeared in South America at about the same time they did in the Middle East. Dillahay notes that the earliest evidence of irrigation canals in Sumeria is between 7,000 and 8,000 years old. Researchers found 3 canals that date to at least 5,400 years ago, buried by sediment layering. A 4th possible canal was also found with special radiocarbon dating techniques revealed to be 6,700 years old. Special radiocarbon dating techniques. They need that kind of stuff. Regular stuff don't work. Some colleagues in the Andes surmise early canal irrigation based on the presence of crops at 9 to 10,000 years ago. Okay, supposedly when the cavemen were hunting down all these large animals in the Holocene and making them extinct. Why are you going to do that? Okay, when it's obvious that all this kind of major food production was going on and major fish production, farming going on. Well, why are you going to do that? You're not going to. And the evidence bears it out. The 76 sites investigated in North America where only 14 of them showed hunting of, large animals. No, all the rest did not. And Jimmy and I found these look like an artificial pond up there in Vermont, in the mountains in Vermont there, in the Green Mountains. And it had a sluice and it had a stone block pyramidal platform. It was just fantastic. And on the side we were on, it was just a much older construction with giant stone blocks. And I had all photographs of it and everything. Got stolen. My computer got stolen while I was traveling around North America here looking at stuff. But they're talking 9 to 10,000 years ago. Well, that's an awfully long time ago. Okay, Dillahay, an anthropologist at Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee, who led the study. So, very interesting stuff there, I think. And a particular interest to me was these walled areas there, which, again, you have this association in a mountainous region. What are they? What are the purpose of those walls there for? When you have all this major production going on around it, well, it must be for some related purpose. Parallel canals. What do you need parallel canals for? Well, you need it for two-way traffic. Just, I have to think about these things since this is what the main focus of my channel is about, the stone walls of New England. And what's it all about? Well, something to do with major scale production, harvesting of resources, etc. Something of that nature has something to do with the stone walls, who were probably built by who the Iroquois called the stone giants, the hostile stone giants that they were encroaching upon. And obviously, if you're encroaching upon some large humanoid people, they probably ain't gonna like it. And of course they're gonna be hostile towards you. But these walled areas here, walled plots as they're calling it here, northwest of Lake Pupo here, well, it's reminding me of something very intense up here in the northeastern part of North America with these canals and artificial harbors down to the south here on Long Island. What do you need a 3,800 foot artificial harbor for? Some canoes? Well, I think somebody's coming here to get stuff way back in time, 7 and 8 and 9 and 10,000 years ago, and probably even further back in time. And if they're coming up here to North America, here to Long Island, and where the stone wall areas are here, well, something was going on here in the far ancient past that had to do with trade, major industrial scale export. And these people wanted probably to be paid in gold or whatever, And many of the North American Indians are a lot taller than their cousins to the south in most areas. As far as we know. But anyway, guys, I just thought you might like to see those from Atlantis, Bolivia. Tim Allen's site here, and look at this block of stone that he's standing right here. It seems to be perfectly cut and polished. What's that, a piece of andesite there? One of the hardest stones in the world, harder than granite. And it looks like it's got salt crystals on it. Looks like a lot of salt in this area here. Where'd that come from? In the mountains. Salt water in the mountains. I don't know. We got mountains around here. It's all nice, clear, fresh water. How'd that happen? All right, guys. Well, anyway, I thought you might be interested in that. And, my interest again in the stone walls is because the stone walls actually far more interesting than anybody thinks. I have all these videos on my channel. Jimmy and I in Vermont. Jimmy the Paleo Mountain Mouse got his own channel. Here's the construction in the stone walls here that repeats itself. I have other photographs subscribers have sent me. Just random photographs where it repeats. No other place repeats again. So here is the wall built with this special particular construction and a special build in the walls. The walls have stories in them. Jimmy the Paleo Mountain Man and I are the ones that found out about the walls. All the walls are snakes. We found out about the eye in the wall, which is this repeating theme in the walls. Okay. Hey guys, Bugcat 7 here. It is. Okay. Even the people who are alternative researchers who look into this stuff didn't notice this recurring again and again and again. Okay. There's also a cross in the walls, built into the walls by Jimmy. Again, in photographs I had that when my computer was stolen, they were all lost. But there's more to these walls in the northeastern part of North America, far more. And reading the stone and understanding what it's saying, either through symbolism or whether symbolic type words, or, pictograms, there's information in these walls. There's a lot more to the research that I've done, my own research, and I've found out a number of things about the walls that nobody else has even talked about at all. Okay. So, if you want to see my videos there, they're in the playlist there of my own research. Okay. This is the eye in the wall. Friday, May 11, 2018. And again, Jimmy and I in Vermont on top of Mount Ephraim, 1,800 feet up. In a just inhospitable area. You're not doing any farming here or anything like that. And if you're building these stone walls, it's going to take you forever. There were miles of stone wall. This wall went on for miles. Okay. All right, guys. Anyway, I thought you might be interested in seeing that from Atlantis, Bolivia here about the Altiplano there in Bolivia. And check out Jim Allen's website there. I'll leave a link for it. I'll put some links in here to some of this stuff and see what he's got to say about it. I think he's, spot on with thinking about how probably South America was Atlantis at one time. And these circular cities were all over the Americas here with canals and everything, similar to what they describe of Atlantis. Right? But it's just a civilization where the repeated circular harbors and constructions are going on. All right. And we've seen examples of them before in the satellite images. All right, guys. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. Please do hit the like button. If you're not a subscriber, please do subscribe because we entertain some very different ideas on this channel that are not talked about on other channels. All right, guys. Anyway, Bugcat7 signing out. Peace.